That's on Talk TV in about 15 minutes after the news.
Hi, I'm Anita Horn with Calgary Transit Service, and you're watching CBC Newsworld, Canada's news network.
Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. Here's what's making news this hour. Air Canada is set to take flight again. The striking pilots reached an agreement with the company just a short time ago.
We are very satisfied that we have reached an agreement that will be acceptable to our pilots, and it is an agreement which allows Air Canada to continue to grow and, most of all, to remain competitive in a North American and global market.
And it is with a unanimous decision that the National Executive Committee, in concert with the negotiating committee, has decided to send it to ratification. Not only that, to recommend acceptance of this tentative agreement.
No details of the deal have been released, but Air Canada says that if the majority of the 2,100 pilots accept the agreement, all its planes should be flying by Wednesday. Some estimates put the airline's losses over the eight-day strike at $120 million. It is only hours now until the case against U.S. President Bill Clinton becomes public. The U.S. Congress will publish the report on the Monica Lewinsky scandal tomorrow, and parts of it will go on the internet. But even before the details go public, they are leaking all over Washington. David Halton has the latest.
Considering resignation, Mr. President.
Ignoring media questions about his future, President Clinton spent much of the day trying to cushion the expected impact of Kenneth Starr's report tomorrow. Earlier, he'd summoned Democratic senators to the White House for another display of remorse.
He shared his feelings and apologized to us personally. We have expressed the hope that the president will continue to demonstrate his contrition.
But apologies may not save Clinton from those 36 boxes. Prosecutor Ken Starr's report and volumes of evidence on the Lewinsky affair delivered to Congress yesterday. There are widespread reports tonight that Starr concludes that Clinton is guilty of 11 impeachable offenses, including perjury, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and abuse of presidential power. In Congress, House members announced that Starr's report will be made public tomorrow, instantly available on the internet.
It's available at www.house.
But even before the report is out, many Republicans are clamoring for Clinton's resignation.
First, the president's conduct has all but destroyed his ability to lead as head of state and commander-in-chief. Second, the president's actions have been corrosive to our national character and have debased the office of the presidency.
I'm proud to introduce my husband and our president, Bill Clinton.
After those warm words for her husband at a Democratic reception tonight, Hillary Clinton made a very public gesture of reconciliation.
It's a measure of the high degree of anxiety over the Starr report that Hillary Clinton was brought out so early to defend her husband. The fear in the White House is that support for the president will crumble quickly if the Starr report is that damaging, and that will just add to the momentum in Congress to impeach the president. David Halton, CBC News, Washington.
Clinton's problems echoed all the way to Wall Street. The Dow Jones average lost 250 points, wiping out the record gain it made earlier in the week. With more on that, here's the CBC's Robert Lack.
The growing problems for President Bill Clinton are turning into growing headaches for U.S. and Canadian stock markets. The threat that independent counsel Kenneth Starr's report to Congress could lead to the impeachment or resignation of Clinton is making markets extremely jittery. And that's just one of the problems.
We've got a crisis in leadership in a number of countries, including in Asia. We've got the Japanese, a weak government in Japan. We've got a Brazilian election coming up with currency pressures in Brazil. We've got Lewinsky Gate in the U.S. And of course, we've got the problems in Russia.
Nervous investors have now completely wiped out all the gains from Tuesday's record day on Wall Street, which has led to speculation that the world's central banks, led by the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve, may coordinate efforts to lower interest rates in a bid to restore investor confidence.
Because of the stock market volatility we've seen in recent days and ongoing bad news out of world economies that we could be heading into a prolonged world economic slump, financial markets and investors in general are looking for some light at the end of the tunnel. They're looking to central banks to possibly lower interest rates to stimulate growth.
It's a lot of wishful thinking, say some economists. That sort of world coordination is beyond the mandate of central banks.
Domestic central banks will set monetary policy on the basis of domestic economic conditions. So the Fed will look at the conditions in the United States and look at how strong the U.S. economy is.
And the U.S. economy is still pretty strong according to the latest figures, with solid growth and low inflation. And many economists are not at all sure the U.S. Federal Reserve would be willing to jeopardize all that just to boost economies and stock markets on the other side of the world. Robert Lack, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario's striking teachers say they could be back in the classroom by next week. They've been off the job for 3 days now. The main dispute has been over teacher prep time. Provincial Education Minister Dave Johnson has said he'll consider delaying new rules on prep time for up to 2 years. But today, Johnson warned there'd be no other compromises with teachers, especially over a new limit of 22 students per class.
Parents are concerned that their kids' classes are getting larger. Kids are not getting the attention that they deserve. So we are very intent upon keeping that cap, that lid, on the class size.
Teachers and local school boards are still holding talks. As many as 200,000 students across the province have been affected by the strike. It's been a frustrating day in the search for the wreckage of Swissair Flight 111. Bad weather kept divers from looking for the cockpit voice recorder for most of the day. But some answers are surfacing from parts of the plane that have already been found. Here's the CBC's Laurie Graham.
This is all that's been found of Swissair Flight 111, a plane that was once 60 meters long. It's like pieces of a puzzle, with the main parts missing.
Some of it is still floating on the surface of the water. Quite a lot of it is under 180 feet of water.
Investigators are still hoping to find larger pieces of the fuselage. They want to put the plane back together to help them try to figure out what happened.
Well, it's important to collect information that will lead us to the source of the problem. We're trying to determine the cause of this accident.
The flight data recorder showed irregularities and an indication that there was a power failure. Officials have also found early signs of heat damage in the cockpit. There's speculation that it may be connected to a type of wiring insulation tape in the plane known as Kapton. It can create a phenomenon known as arc tracking. Once Kapton is cracked, the wire chars. Then electrical arcs can track along the tape like lightning bolts, causing temperatures to reach almost 5,000 degrees, vaporizing everything in its path. The flight data recorder shows that there were faults in a number of the plane's systems, which has led to questions from reporters about whether the plane's electrical system malfunctioned.
Is that not consistent with, if not total, at least severe and widespread electrical failure?
Well, prior to being that categorical about electrical failure, let me say that this is a very complex system.
And while investigators try to piece together what happened to Swissair Flight 111, hundreds of volunteers continue searching, combing the coast for any more wreckage from the plane. The Navy ship HMCS Halifax has joined the operation, taking over for the Preserver, which has been salvaging bodies and debris from the crash.
And while it's a gruesome mission, no doubt, morale on board is high, and I think my ship's company takes great comfort in knowing that our efforts out there will hopefully bring some closure to the victims' families.
Just this evening, divers were sent back down for the first time since Sunday. They're looking for the cockpit voice recorder, the piece of evidence that is sure to tell investigators more about the final moments of Flight Swissair 111. Rory Graham, CBC News, Halifax.
Reform MP Jack Ramsey appeared in a Saskatchewan courtroom. The former justice critic has been charged with sex offenses that date back almost 30 years. The Alberta MP didn't enter a plea in court, but outside he maintained his innocence.
I have faith in the justice system, and I think that at the end of the day, that I'll be exonerated from these charges.
The allegations were made by two women. They say they were sexually assaulted when they were teenagers on an Indian reserve in 1969. At the time, Ramsey was an RCMP officer on that reserve. A preliminary hearing is set for February. That's just one of the troubles plaguing the Reform Party this summer. Today, Reformers started a two-day caucus meeting in Banff. They're calling it a retreat to prepare for the new session of Parliament. But as Eric Sorensen reports, they couldn't escape from their internal problems.
The camaraderie of the Reform MPs' team photo would at first glance suggest it's been a problem-free summer. The MPs endorsed Preston Manning's leadership.
Just a spontaneous, unanimous thing. Of course, this whole thrust is to get on to the issues.
And Manning himself vowed to turn the heat now on the Liberals. But conspicuous by their absence were MPs who generated nothing but bad publicity for Reform recently. Jack Ramsey, beset by legal problems. Ted White, who criticized the leader.
He's got a squeaky voice.
Jim Hart, who also criticized Manning, quit caucus and then asked to be let back in. Add to that the decision by a few Reformers to opt into the MP pension plan after Reform's exaggerated campaign to criticize it. And all in all, it made for a summer many would like to forget.
It's taken the focus off of what we should have been doing for about a month, and I don't think that's positive.
Reform has always found itself on the horns of a dilemma. On the one hand, promoting MPs' freedom to speak out, to answer to their constituents more than to the party. On the other hand, to maintain discipline, Reform has also felt the need at times to punish those who don't toe the party line. For opting back into the pension plan, Bill Gilmore lost his post as environment critic.
I will be watching who can keep their eye on the ball and who can keep their eye on the big picture. And members who get off on something else will just find themselves relegated to will have relegated themselves to the sidelines.
But it's that kind of discipline that leaves some Reformers uneasy.
We have had that difficulty since we came here, is trying to somehow be a populist party that enables MPs to do what they have to do, represent their constituents, where sometimes that falls not in favor of the leadership of the party.
But that's about as much discontent as you could find here today. Most wanted to focus on issues like the economy, health care, and unity. Even the MP here, who was disciplined, says Manning's only sidelined him temporarily from his critic's post.
The caucus made their decision that I would take some time in the penalty box. I'm comfortable with that, and we'll move forward.
Moving forward includes Reform's push to create a new party, a united alternative to the Liberals. Preston Manning says he recognizes that alone poses a challenge to his leadership. Reformers here hope they've at least nipped any more challenges coming from within their own caucus. Eric Sorensen, CBC News, Banff.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin has bowed to pressure from Parliament. He's chosen a new, more popular candidate for Prime Minister. Yevgeny Primakov is Russia's acting foreign Prime Minister. The State Duma twice rejected Viktor Chernomyrdin for the job. He was Yeltsin's first choice. But Parliament is expected to endorse Primakov as Prime Minister. MPs will vote on the nomination tomorrow. Politics is far from the only cause of concern for Russians. Just getting something to eat can be an ordeal. Prices have gone through the roof and the economy is in chaos. We have a report from the CBC's Celine Gallipeau.
The harsh routine of poverty. A bowl of tasteless porridge is the staple of every meal for the Nikitin family. Sasha is a computer programmer, but he hasn't been paid in 6 months. We supported reforms because they promised us so much, he says, but in fact we've lost everything. For Lena, keeping a normal household has become almost impossible in the current crisis. Life's basic necessities have become luxuries. Toilet paper is now beyond their means. These small napkins are rationed. And they're down to their last bar of soap, so they don't wash every day. It's impossible to think about the future, she says. I can barely make it through tomorrow. What shall we do in winter? Sasha takes the older children to school on his way to work, hoping today he'll get paid. For Liena and her youngest son, it's time for a humiliating task. Just a few weeks ago, they never imagined they'd be forced to scour Moscow's parks in a daily hunt for empty bottles. The fact is that millions of Russians have been reduced to this, just scraping by on almost nothing. The economy is crumbling, and with no leadership to start putting it right, anxiety and fear are setting in. You see it everywhere, at the now familiar lineups in front of banks where people wait all day, desperate to withdraw their savings. I put all my money in that bank, hoping to live on the interest, cries this woman, but they robbed me, they left me with nothing. And in the stores where prices skyrocket. Sausage is 70, 80, 100 rubles. It used to be 20, she says. How do they expect us to survive when our pension stays the same? Patience is clearly running out. You're robbing us, this woman shouts at the store's manager. You raise prices, put the money in your pocket, and we're left hungry. For many, life seems unbearably difficult, yet Russians are coping, not revolting. Lena's empty bottles will bring her 40 kopecks, about 2 cents, not even enough to buy a single egg. But like so many Russians these days, she's surviving on her capacity to endure hardships. Céline Galipo, CBC News, Moscow.
The stars are coming out in Toronto. The city's film festival has opened. 10 days and nights of cinema ranging from Hollywood productions to the most obscure of independents. The CBC's Mike Wise is at the opening night party. Mike?
Oh, thanks. You could say the movers and shakers in the Canadian film industry are here gathered tonight at the opening night party for the Toronto International Film Festival. A festival that has lived up to that international reputation. It is considered one of the top North American festivals and one of the top 4 festivals worldwide, behind festivals in Cannes, Berlin, and Venice. Bring on the glamour, bring on the glitz, as Toronto gets a taste of Tinseltown, with 10 days of movies, paparazzi, and celebrities.
Well, I've been here 10 minutes. The limo ride was lovely. Although I want it to be cold. I hate hot weather.
There are more than 240 feature films being screened at this year's festival. It kicked off with the North American premiere of The Red Violin. It's produced by Toronto's Rhombus Media and is being called a Canadian film of epic proportions. It was shot in 5 languages on 3 continents, tracing the history of a musical instrument over 300 years and exploring the lives of the people it came in contact with.
A little nervous? Well, you know, I'm nervous about the speech. That's the worst. And after I'll be fine.
Many of you here tonight. With any opening night gala comes the speeches and introductions before a sold-out crowd at Toronto's Roy Thompson Hall, filled with film fans and industry watchers, all eager to get down to the business of film, whether at a screening or at any of the dozens of cocktail parties and receptions planned for the festival.
From the industry side, that's where the growth is happening right now. Press, buyers, sellers, agents, publicists, all the people that come to do business here in Toronto.
But far away from the wheelers and dealers is a whole other side to the festival, the public side. Film goers will spend over $1 million at the box office for a chance to see films they might not see elsewhere. There are other public festivals, large public festivals across the country, most notably those in Montreal and Vancouver. The thing, though, that does set the Toronto Film Festival apart from the others in this country is the industry side of it. Because Toronto has such a large number of broadcasters and production companies and other media industries, this has really developed the reputation of the place that international buyers and people will come to if they can only make a couple of festivals around the world. So they put Toronto on their list of places to visit, and as a result, a lot of the studios bring out a lot of their big-name talent and celebrities to help promote their movies. Carla?
Okay, Mike, can you tell us what big celebrities will be coming to Toronto?
We're expecting a bit of a circus tomorrow. That's when Tom Cruise arrives. He's not in any movies this year. He's coming as a producer of a new film. That is tomorrow night. Saturday, we're expecting Meryl Streep. Other names we're expecting include everyone from Gene Hackman to Jon Favreau, Janine Garofalo. The list is just going to go on. We'll have a busy week here in Toronto.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
The CBC's Mike Wise in Toronto. That's the news. I'm Carla Robinson. In a moment, we'll rejoin Talk TV, but first, here's the latest business news.
Hello, I'm Dave Brindle in Calgary with an NBN update. Northwest Airlines reached a tentative agreement with its pilots this afternoon, but the pilots won't be going back to work until the bargaining committee meets Saturday. To the markets now. What do Bill Clinton and Brazil have in common? Well, neither had a good day, and both weighed down the markets today. Canada ended up being something of a safe haven. The TSE was down 75 points, a decent performance compared to U.S. markets. John Kellett told NBN why Toronto held up so well.
Resource stocks did quite well today. Gold stocks were up over 8% on index because the gold bullion price was up $6. Oil and natural gas prices were strong because of problems between Afghanistan and